Exo-Man, the show that looked at the 1977 superhero television landscape and decided the appropriate response was, you know what the audience really want? A man in a bulletproof Tupperware casserole dish rattling menacingly towards organized crime. And here's the thing, the suit was so slow, so magnificently, catastrophically lumbering that the mob and forces it was supposed to terrify had to politely stand still and wait for it to arrive. It's less Iron Man, more Iron Lung. And the universe has spoken, but it did not pick up the series. Let's keep it 100. Exo-Man is generally fascinating failure. Not because the concept was bad, the concept was 30 years ahead of its time, but because everything that killed it had almost nothing to do with the movie itself. This is a story about NBC's desperate, doomed attempt to build a superhero universe to compete with ABC, and is deliciously bleak. To understand Exo-Man, you have to understand what 1977 television looked like through NBC's eyes. It looked like humiliation. Over at ABC, Lee Majors were rebuilding himself at $6 million a pop every Thursday night. The $6 Million Man had premiered in 1974 and turned into a genuine cultural phenomenon. Toys, lunchboxes, slow motion running sound effects embodied permanently in the American psyche. And then, because one bionic superhero apparently wasn't enough, ABC spun off the Bionic Woman in 1976. Lindsay Wagner, also a phenomenon, also printing money. NBC, watching this from across the dial, did what any self respecting network does when a competitor invents a gold mine. They decided to dig their own slightly adjacent, significantly less successful hole. Their strategy was essentially superhero stacking. If ABC had two bionic humans, NBC would build an entire stable, and the creative engine at the center of this attempt was a man named Martin Caden. Caden was, in a very real sense, the architect of everything NBC was trying to replicate. His 1972 novel Cyborg was the source material for the $6 Million Man. He gave ABC their crown jewels, so NBC's logic was essentially get Caden, get the guy, have him build us ours. The result eventually was Exo-Man. But before Exo-Man, NBC tried twice. First, a 1975 series called The Invisible Man, David McKellen, proper British gravitas, based on H.G. Wells. It ran 12 episodes and got cancelled. The network didn't like the effects costs, so they replaced it with Gemini Man in 1976. Ben Murphy as a government agent who could turn invisible for exactly 15 minutes a day via a wristwatch or he would die. Classic NBC slapping a hard limitation on their superpower so the budget didn't get out of hand. Gemini was canceled, no surprise, after 5 aired episodes. 11 were produced, 6 never even made American broadcast, and the network was already wobbling. Thus, enter Exo-Man, June 18th, 1977, NBC's Saturday Night at the Movies, the last throw of the dice. So, what is Exo-Man exactly? Dr. Nicholas Conrad, David Aykroyd, is a physics professor who has spent years trying to develop a material that converts ultraviolet light directly into mechanical force. Compact power source. Legitimate science fiction premise. He's brilliant. He's idealistic. He is the kind of good natured academic who gets into trouble by being a decent human being. And one night, Conrad helps a student by co signing a loan at a bank that's in the middle of being robbed. He captures the surviving robber, who happens to be the nephew of Chicago mob boss. Classic television trope. He couldn't just not catch the guy. The local crime kingpin, Kermit Haas, played with considerable malevolence by Jose Ferrer, is told to keep Conrad quiet before the trial. His henchman breaks Conrad's spine with a steel pipe in a laundry room, of all places, and leaves him permanently paraplegic. Now, what follows is honestly pretty solid character work. Conrad becomes reclusive, pushes away his girlfriend Emily, played by the late Anne Shadeen, who you might remember from Alf. and he refuses to testify because Haas threatens her life. He's not a superhero yet. He's a broken man in a chair staring at the wreckage of his existence. And then, out of nowhere, he visits an art gallery. There's a medieval armor exhibit, and the pennies drop as he has this epiphany. Working with colleagues, borrowing a bulletproof polymorph from one, chainmail materials from another, Conrad hand fabricates an exoskeleton. He has a body cast made. He builds a clamshell press and a step fan that clamps the suit around him. He combines it with his UV to mechanical force material and gets his super strength and invulnerability. Look, conceptually, this is Iron Man. This is exactly Iron Man. Disabled man engineers his way back to mobility, weaponizes the solution, fights crime. The film even features Harry Morgan from MASH and Dragnet as the government official who quietly recruits Conrad for further work at the end. It's establishing a universe, a Nick Fury moment in 1977. Now, here's the problem. And the problem is the suit. The suit moves at approximately the speed of existential dread. It shuffles, it trundles. The actor inside it, Aykroyd, not a small man, is encased in something that appears to have been constructed from leftover kitchen appliances and the optimism of a network executive who had never actually watched it walk. The guards at Haas Mansion don't even run from the Exo-Man. They wait for him. They shoot him repeatedly while he takes 16 minutes to cross the lawn. And here's the real crime. Conrad only puts on the suit twice in the entire movie, both times in the final 10 minutes. Everything before that, the lab work, the mob politics, the relationship with Emily, the eternal moral crisis, is generally well crafted television. Now let's keep it 100 about why Exo-Man actually didn't make it to series, because the official story, the one Martin Caden told, the one that got into the history books, is that NBC passed because the show had no merchandising potential. Spoiler alert, that's not the whole story. The film aired on a Saturday night on June of 1977, opposite reruns on ABC and CBS, and it pulled a 13.9 household rating with 33% audience share. For a summer pilot, that's not failure, that's legitimately strong. NBC had the numbers, they had the story, they had the writer who built their competitor's biggest franchise. Here's what they didn't have: a time slot. NBC programming chief Paul Klein had made an unanticipated acquisition. He picked up the Bionic one for NBC Saturday nights at 8 p.m., the exact slot where an Exo-Man series would have lived. The show that Caton himself had seeded through its original Cyborg novel had just colonized the only available territory. And the suit, Martin Caden said publicly that Universal's merchandising department had insisted on designing an exosuit that could be easily replicated as a children's toy, that the commercial requirements destroyed the concept, that a suit built for a toy aisle couldn't be a suit built for a man who needed to survive. And when you look at the finished product, slow, boxy, more Tonka truck than Iron Man, you have to believe him. Now, let's fast forward through the wreckage of NBC's superhero portfolio. Gemini Man, canceled before half its episodes aired. The 11 produced episodes were eventually Frankenstein into a feature film called Riding with Death in 1981, which is exactly as coherent as that sentence sounds. It was later immortalized as an episode of Mystery Science Theater 3000. Man from Atlantis had the best run of the bunch. Patrick Duffy has an amnesiac Atlantean, webbed hands, dolphin kicks, superhuman strength. Premiered as a TV movie in March 1977, and the ratings were strong enough to commission a full series for the fall. Mark Harris swam through portals in the ocean that led to medieval Europe and alien worlds. It got weird fast. Duffy himself compared it to the 1966 Batman in terms of camp drift. By 1978, NBC's superhero universe was a graveyard. The Invisible Man, Gemini Man, Exo-Man, Man from Atlantis, all gone. While ABC still has Steve Austin and Diana Prince running towards syndication immortality. Here's the thing that sits at the bottom of the Exo-Man story like a rock in a lake. The concept worked, not in 1977, But Iron Man, actual Iron Man, Robert Downey Jr., $585 million opening weekend is built on the exact same architecture, disabled man, self engineered exoskeleton, mobility as weaponized recovery. The difference, obviously, is that John Favreau's suit could run, it could fly, it could shoot repulsor blasts. It did not require its enemies to stand in place and be patient. In 1994, a series called Mantis premiered on Fox. Carl Lumbly as a scientist paralyzed by a police bullet who builds a mechanically augmented neurotransmitter interactive system to walk and fight crime. Same premise 17 years later. That one actually made it to series, 22 episodes, so the idea had legs. Exo-Man just had a suit that didn't. The real tragedy of Exo-Man isn't the failure, it's the proximity to success. The bones of the thing are sound, the human story. A good man broken by systems he tried to serve, rebuilding himself on his own terms, refusing to let the mob or his paralysis or his grief be the final word. That's a story worth telling. Aykroyd sells it. Jose Ferrer sells The Menace. Harry Morgan's cryptic sign off at the end sees exactly the kind of episodic infrastructure you'd need. But the 1970s television superhero was trapped in amber. No matter how super your hero was, they only ever fought standard criminals because network television in 1977 didn't have the budget or the creative permission to imagine anything larger. The characters were super, the world they operated in was not. And so every bionic arm, an invisible wristwatch, an exoskeleton suit, an invisible plane eventually ran out of the mobs to dismantle, and the audience drifted, and the credits rolled. The Exo Man had the suits. None of it matters in the end because the network will always find a way to give your time slot to the franchise you created in the first place. If you want gem video essays on cult television, retro animation, and forgotten pop culture, subscribe to Pulp Vision and make sure you hit that notification bell. As always, thanks for watching, and until next time.